Yes, all right.
Oh, yeah, good. Oh, yeah, no, I didn't have Oh, no, they didn't install them now. Yeah. Yeah. Is it north, we all go north?
Good morning. I'd like to call to order the Public Improvement Commission hearing of November 21st, 2019. Before getting to the hearing minutes, I want to introduce our new interim executive secretary, Avi Alamu. Avi, thanks for joining the team. Moving on to our first item, the hearing minutes. At the request of the Public Improvement Commission staff, the acceptance of the minutes of the PIC hearing held on November 7th, 2019. Any questions or comments on the hearing minutes? All right, I'll entertain a motion on this item.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Moving on to the public hearing, our first item is on a joint petition by Avalon Bay Communities, Inc., Roman Catholic Archbishop of Boston, and the Boston Housing Authority for the widening and relocation of the existing right-of-way lines of Fidelis Way, a private way open to public travel in Brighton, located on its northwesterly side of 139-149 Washington Street, northeast of Washington Street. This was new business on November 7th, 2019. And this is as shown on a plan entitled City of Boston Public Works Department, Engineering Division, Widening and Relocation Plan, Fidelis Way, Private Way, Open to Public Travel, Brighton District, one sheet, dated September 17th, 2019. Morning.
Good morning, John Schmidt with Niche Engineering.
I'm David Gillespie with Avalon Bay Communities. Thank you for having us. I'll just give a quick introduction to the project, and then I'll turn it over to John for other technical details. Our project, as proposed, is on Washington Street between Commonwealth Ave and Cambridge Street, part of the Archdiocese of Boston properties. It is a 3.3-acre lot. We're currently approved by the BPDA and the Zoning Commission for a 228-unit project in 2 buildings. We received the BPDA and Zoning Commission approvals earlier this year. The project also features 228 parking spaces in a podium garage and is approximately 277,000 gross square feet. So that's where we are as far as the process goes, and I'll turn it over to John to talk about the specific petitions.
The first petition before you is for the widening and relocation of Fidelis Way. Fidelis Way is a private way open to public traffic, and we are that is owned owned by the Boston Housing Authority, who is a petitioner on this. And we are widening that about 10 feet into our parcel to allow for a wider street, a wider path of travel, as well as wider sidewalks, on-street parking, and turning movements into the proposed garage.
John, I know this is in the specific repairs, but can you just talk about what the widening and relocation will allow with a little more detail?
So in Fidelis Way, once we widen it, we will have about 38 feet of pavement, curb to curb. We allow 7-foot parking lanes on both sides and 24-foot traveled way along the main drag. We are proposing on-street parking along here on our parcel and maintaining the existing parking that's out there on the abutter side, introducing some bump outs and other landscaping improvements. We'll have a concrete 6-foot wide concrete sidewalk. Behind that and outside the private way, we'll have a series of landscape improvement and street trees.
Todd, since this is a private way open to public travel, I'm going to assume abutters on both sides of Fidelis Way has access to the fee ownership to the half the street. Should the other side of the street be part of this petition? Because this artificially changes the center line of the street.
The BHA is the
So
they're the
on the
fee
other side.
owner.
So between the two petitioners, they cover the full limits of the center line of the street to the limits of what is being asked.
Other questions or comments on the widening and relocation? Todd or Avi? Members of the public? All right, I'll entertain a motion on this item.
Make a motion to approve on a joint petition by Avalon Bay Communities Incorporated for the widening and relocation of the existing right-of-way lanes in Fidelis Way, as written into the record by the chair.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Moving on to our next item on a joint petition by Avalon Bay Communities, Inc. and the Roman Catholic Archbishop of Boston for the acceptance of pedestrian easement adjacent to Washington Street, a public way in Brighton, on its northeasterly side at address numbers 139-149 between Fidelis Way and Monastery Road. This was new business on November 7th, 2019, and this is shown on a plan entitled City of Boston Public Works Department, Engineering Division, Pedestrian Easement Plan, Washington Street, 139-149 Washington Street, Brighton District, one sheet dated September 17th, 2019.
Good morning, Commissioners. John Schmidt with Niche Engineering. And this widening, this pedestrian easement will run from the private way here, Montessori Road, to Fidelis Way, which is the private way. It's a 3-foot wide pedestrian easement, and this will allow us to reconstruct public sidewalks to allow a 13-foot sidewalk, 8 feet of which is concrete. 3 feet will fall within that pedestrian easement. A 5-foot pervious tree pit along the edge of the curb line, and various other street improvements.
John, are there any bus lines that go down this street? Are there any MBTA bus lines that go down this street?
There are bus
The
lines.
reason I should ask, obviously. So if there are any bus shelters that needs to be put to accommodate your clients, if you can give some thought as to the appropriate location of a bus shelter that may be part of your project. I'm going to assume you are going to be building up new buildings over here or repurposing stuff.
No, we're building new buildings.
Okay, so therefore you do have some room. So think about who your clients are, their vulnerability in needs of public transportation, and if they are temperature sensitive, meaning my age, I may need some shelter, so give it some thought.
I think as part of our community benefits in the package, there was, through the BPDA, some improvements to some bus shelters in the areas. I don't think that it was identified to do a new bus shelter, but
So if the thought pattern can be, again, I don't know where the centroid of
Sure.
where the most convenient bus shelter location, bus stop location, so figure out where the stops can be consolidated, or adding one messes up the travel times. So sometimes you can just adjust the location of a bus shelter, bus stop to have a shelter.
Other questions or comments on the ped easement? Side item. Members of the public? All right, I'll entertain a motion on this item.
Make a motion to approve the joint petition by Avalon Bay Communities and Roman Catholic Archbishop of Boston for the acceptance of a pedestrian easement adjacent to Washington Street as read into the record by the chair, as shown in the plan entitled City of Boston Public Works Department, Engineering Division, Pedestrian Easement Plan, Washington Street, 139-149 Washington Street, Brighton District, one sheet dated September 17, 2019.
All in favor? Aye. So moved. Moving on to our third item on a joint petition by Avalon Bay Communities, Inc., the Roman Catholic Archbishop of Boston, and the Boston Housing Authority for the making of specific repairs within the following roadways in Brighton, consisting of curb realignment, sidewalk reconstruction, as well as new and relocated pedestrian ramps, specialty pavements, streetlights, street trees, landscaping, storm drain infrastructure, hydrants, and driveway curb cuts. Locations are Washington Street on its northeasterly side at address numbers 139-149 between Fidelis Way and Monastery Road, and Fidelis Way, a private way to open public travel northeast of Washington Street. This was new business on November 7th, 2019. And this is shown on a set of plans entitled City of Boston Public Works Department, Engineering Division, Specific Repairs Plan, 139 Washington Street, Fidelis Way, Brighton, 3 sheets dated September 2019.
Good morning, John Schmidt with Niche Engineering. So the specific repairs that we're proposing along Washington Street will run from Montessori Road to Fidelis Way. We will provide a 13-foot wide public sidewalk. 8 feet of it will be poured concrete. 5 feet of pervious pavers with a series of 6 new street trees. Some minor street light relocation, and accessible crosswalks at all the intersections. We have coordinated our work with the work that's been previously approved by this board for the Cabot Fords project. That's all been coordinated and respectful of each other. In regards to Fidelis Way, the private way, we are widening Fidelis Way on our side to provide on-street parking, as well as maintaining the parking, that's existing parking on the other side of Fidelis Way. We have a concrete sidewalk that will run along the curb line, and we have a garage entrance here where we maintain a flush concrete sidewalk along the sidewalk. And then at the intersections of the driveway that will serve the project as well as the DHA, we have a flush concrete sidewalk there too, as is it's requested by the city. We have some street trees, but actually, I won't call it street trees. We have some landscape tree improvements that fall outside the right-of-way. And this has been reviewed and blessed by the BPDA, Parks Department, and Disabilities.
John, you mentioned parking on the private way, so that is the right of the private way, it's not a city? Because we are not regulating it, nor enforcing it, nor any of that stuff.
Correct, it's a private way, it's,
But are they deeded spots?
I do not believe they are metered spots.
No, they're not metered
They
spots.
are not deeded, so any person can park there, but the enforcement and the regulation of those parking spots, unlike the spots that might be on Washington Street, is yours.
Well, it's actually going to be the BHA's, because as part of our
Sorry,
agreement with the
my
BHA
bad.
is, as part of our agreement with the
Finishes.
BHA, we agreed to build those spaces, but then to sign them such that for BHA residents only, and all of our parking will occur within our building.
On Washington Street, what is the loading characteristics? Are you going to have on-street parking on Washington Street?
For the guy who's to answer.
Yeah, Guy Booth, Howard Sign Hudson. Could you repeat the question again, Para?
Guy, do you have on-street parking on Washington Street?
Oh, yeah. So Washington is currently Austin Brighton South neighborhood resident permit
So it will
parking.
remain
We're
residential.
maintaining that.
And all the loading for the building occurs on site?
Yes.
Yes.
John, maintenance agreement has been executed by the Archdiocese or the BHA. Who do we have the agreement with?
So the license agreement will be with Avalon Bay.
My bad.
Other questions or comments? Members of the public? I'll entertain a motion on this item.
Make a motion to approve on a joint petition by Avalon Bay Communities for the making of specific repairs within the following roadways in Brighton, Washington Street and Fidelis Way, as read into the record by the chair and is shown on a set of plans entitled City of Boston Public Works Department, Engineering Division, Specific Repairs Plan, 139 Washington Street, Fidelis Way, Brighton, 3 sheets dated September 2019.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Moving on to our fourth item.
Thank you.
On a joint petition by Stewart Acquisition 12 LLC and Stewart Acquisition 22 LLC for the granting of an earth retention license for the installation of a temporary earth support system within the following public ways in Boston proper. Stewart Street on its southerly side at address numbers 212-222, east of Church Street, and Shaman Street on its northerly side between Church Street and Coconut Grove Lane. This was new business on November 7th, 2019. And this is shown on a plan entitled City of Boston Public Works Department, Engineering Division, Temporary Earth Retention Plan, Stewart Street Residences, 212-222 Stewart Street, Boston, one sheet dated December 6, 2018.
Good morning, Commissioners. John Schmidt with Niche Engineering, and with me is Neil Howard from Cranscombe, the developer of this project. As we were here at New Business, this is really a housekeeping issue. We had intended to submit this with the application in July, and it fell through the cracks, so now we're just finalizing that. The project is scheduled to start construction very soon. The SOE, the supportive excavation, consists of a series of sheet piles around the perimeter of the project that will be driven 40 feet into the ground. Along Stewart Street, they will be project less than 6 feet into the public way, and on Shaman Street, less than 6 feet into the public way. We also revised the sheeting design to protect and maintain the existing fire hydrant at this corner, and has been reviewed and blessed by the Boston Water and Sewer Commission. At the time that it is appropriate, the sheeting will be cut down to be 6 feet below the sidewalk grade, as is standard city practice.
Todd, is this in the groundwater overlay district?
This is in the GCOD district, and we have a GCOD approval, and we also have Boston Water and Sewer site plan approval. We are capturing stormwater within the building and
The
project.
monitoring wells,
What's that?
the groundwater monitoring wells, are you installing any? It's been some time since we,
Yeah, so all of that came through in their last round of
okay,
PSC.
so.
Yes,
all-
yeah. So we've done everything but this piece.
Other questions or comments on the earth retention license? Tyler Abbott? Members of the public? All right, I'll entertain a motion on this item.
Make a motion on public hearing agenda item 4 on a joint petition by Stewart Acquisition 12 LLC and Stewart Acquisition 22 LLC for the granting of an earth retention license at Stewart Street and Charlotte Street, as more particularly read in the record by the chair.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
So
you.
moved. Our next item is on a petition by Zero Athens LLC for the acceptance of pedestrian easements adjacent to the following public ways in South Boston: West 2nd Street on its southerly side at address number 21-35, east of Athens Street, and Athens Street on its northeasterly side, southeast of West 2nd Street. This was new business on November 7, 2019. And this is shown on a plan entitled City of Boston Public Works Department, Engineering Division, pedestrian easement 21-35 West 2nd Street, South Boston, one sheet dated September 20th, 2019.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. Attorney Nick Zazula, McDermott, Quilty, and Miller, zoning and permitting firm for the petitioner. With me to my right, Zero Athens LLC, and the petitioner's Neil Howard. To my left, civil engineer Carlos Scolti from Civil and Environmental Consultants, Inc. Last time we didn't have a rendering of the building. We thought it would be helpful this time to have a rendering of the project as it currently stands. It's 21-35 West 2nd Street. It's between Athens Street and West 2nd Street where it reaches a point at Dot Ave. It's about 10,183 square foot triangular shaped parcel utilized previously as a parking lot and construction laydown for nearby buildings. As you can see, the project kind of takes into account the uniqueness and site constraints with a unique sawtooth massing design along the West 2nd Street frontage. Also envisions a large addition of significant open space at this prominent intersection of West 2nd Street and Athens Street. Again, briefly, the proposal is for a new 6-story building, 55 residential units, approximately 2,300 square feet of ground floor retail commercial space, which you can see in the rendering in front of you. One point of update from the new business hearing was in the interim, we have now gotten approval from the BPDA on November 14th for the vertical discontinuance, which is a joint petition with the BPDA. So that taking an authorization was approved by the board last week on November 14th. The BPDA has now signed the co-petition for that action. With that, I will have Carlos go through the first of our 4 petitions for the pedestrian easement. Thanks, Carlos.
Sure. Again, for the record, Carlos Scolti with Civil and Environmental Consultants, the engineer on the project.
So as Nick mentioned, we have a pedestrian easement in front of you today. It's for 2 easements, one along Athens Street, along the rear of the property, and one along West 2nd Street. The Athens Street pedestrian easement is basically to provide accessible width for the pedestrian path, maintaining the existing essentially edge of pavement along the project, continuing to face the curb from the adjacent property here, as well as the curb at the intersection there, in order to provide a 48-inch minimum wide accessible path. We're providing an accessible easement on the property to be able to achieve that. And then along West 2nd Street also, where we have some trees proposed along the project frontage, we want to provide an increased accessible path up to 5 feet. So in order to do that, we have areas within the recessed part of the building here where we have a sawtooth pattern, and we're providing a pedestrian access easement to be able to provide 5 feet of continuous accessible width in those areas.
Sarah, I will defer to your expertise, but the part which I will disagree with you ever so slightly is it is not a continuous 5-foot path, because if I walk that thing and if I'm blind, I'm going to hit my head 5 times with the sawtooth. So it is not a continuous path. But are you okay with it, Sarah?
Just to clarify, there is no building component that you're walking beneath in those areas where we're providing the access.
I didn't see that clarification, so my bad.
The tree pits are what bumps out, right?
The tree pits here along the frontage in the right of way are 3 feet wide as opposed to the continuous 2-foot band that we have. So there's a 2-foot.
So that walking along that pathway, that is the building. Correct. Okay, so the easement which you are giving us is not a continuous. That's the only.
It would provide a continuous path, but it wouldn't be a meandering continuous path.
That is where, so for a visually impaired person, that is, as long as you're fine. Yeah.
Yes, so Sarah Leong, Disabilities Commission. We work with the proponent as well with the BPDA and the Parks Department to ensure that there was an accessible path along the sidewalks and also accommodate parks requirements for tree pits. So it was a collaborative effort to find that extra space on the sidewalk.
Other questions or comments on the pet easement?
So I think this was addressed, but I just want to refresh my memory, is at the intersection of Athens and Second, there's a crosswalk there, correct?
There is, yes.
All right.
But that crosswalk goes across Athens, not across West Second.
Correct. Going across West Second, you have to go another block to the west still, then it crosses West Second at that point.
Other questions or comments? Todd, Robbie? All set. All right. Members of the public? All right. I'll entertain a motion on the pedestrian easement.
Make a motion to approve the petition by Zero Athens LLC for the acceptance pedestrian easement adjacent to the following ways in South Boston as read into the record by the chair, and shown on a set of plans entitled City of Boston Public Works Department, Engineering Division, pedestrian easement 2135, West Second Street, South Boston, one sheet dated September 20th, 2019.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Our next item is on a joint petition by Zero Athens LLC and the Boston Planning and Development Agency for the vertical discontinuance of portions of West Second Street, Public Way in South Boston, located on its southerly side at address numbers 21-35 east of Athens Street, vertically above the grade of the sidewalk. This was new business on November 7th, 2019, and this is as shown on a set of plans entitled City of Boston Public Works Department, Engineering Division, Vertical Discontinuance, 21-35 West 2nd Street, South Boston, one sheet dated July 11th, 2019. Carlos.
So again, as previously mentioned, this has been through the BPDA coordination process and has been signed off by them. Ultimately, what we're proposing here is that there's four portions where the upper level of the building partially overhang out to the public right-of-way for a width of approximately a little bit more than 3 feet. Ultimately, there's four total areas. The grade falls as you move westbound on West 2nd Street with a head height of 10-foot minimum at this location, increases to a 10-foot head height of 12 feet at this location. Fairly straightforward, four small encroachments, each of which are about 11 to 12 square feet each for a total square footage of about 45 square feet.
I just want to make sure we are meeting our standards for, it does not exceed our maximum standard for overhang on the sidewalk.
Yeah, it's less than, all of them are less than 2/3 to the sidewalk.
Okay. And can you just show the rendering again, just to walk us through what the
Sure.
red sections are?
So what you have here behind the trees here, you have these 1, 2, 3, 4 undulations, I believe, that'll partially hang out for a distance of about 3 feet, which is roughly this wide out to the public right of way.
Are you okay with the reference to the bottom right here?
No, look at 2/3.
The structure is built with anything so that water doesn't retain or flow and create little icicles.
All the roof drains will be interior plumbed, and they're all routed to surface drainage that's been coordinated with Boston Water Sewer Commission.
Other questions or comments on the vertical discontinuance? Todd, Robbie? All set. Good. All right. Members of the public? All right. I'll entertain a motion on this item.
Make a motion to approve a joint petition by Zero Athens LLC and the Boston Planning and Development Agency for the vertical discontinuance of portions of West 2nd Street, as read into the record by the chair and is shown on a set of plans entitled City of Boston Public Works Department, Engineering Division, Vertical Discontinuance, 21-35 West 2nd Street, South Boston, one sheet dated July 11, 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Moving on to our next item on a petition by Zero Athens LLC for the making of specific repairs within the following public ways in South Boston, consisting of curb and sidewalk reconstruction, as well as new and relocated specialty pavements, street trees, storm drain infrastructure, and driveway curb cuts. Locations are West 2nd Street on its southerly side at address numbers 21-35 east of Athens Street, and Athens Street on its northeasterly side southeast of West 2nd Street. This was new business on November 7th, 2019. And this is shown on a set of plans entitled City of Boston Public Works Department, Engineering Division, Specific Repairs Plan, Athens and West 2nd Street Apartments, 21-35 West 2nd Street, South Boston, 3 sheets dated October 3rd, 2019.
Again, Carlos Sculte with CEC for the applicant. So the specific repairs we have in front of you today are for a distance of about 215 feet along West 2nd Street and 195 feet along Athens Street. Starting on the Athens Street again, which is essentially the back house for the development.
We're maintaining the edge of pavement along this edge, installing new vertical granite curb where there currently is none. So under existing conditions, it's essentially just one wide open parking lot entrance here with no curbing, no delineation for access. We're going to be formalizing that with new curb, new sidewalk, with 2 flush curb entries into the loading area, as well as a small parking area in the rear as well, flush access to those locations.
On the session in new business, we talked a lot about the size of trucks. We feel okay about that
Sure.
loading there.
We did look at that, and an FU36 can maneuver into and out of this space as well as fit within the loading space that we have within the building as well without encroaching out onto the public side.
Sidewalk.
We did check that, it does fit. And also making all the turns that we need to at the egress there as well. Along West 2nd Street, we're proposing to remove and reset the existing granite curb. Right now, there's one existing driveway entrance into this entirely paved parcel today. We're going to be closing that off to make for a more uniform sidewalk section along the frontage there. As we briefly touched on before, there's going to be a 2-foot wide impervious paver strip that's going to be continuous along the frontage. And we're proposing 5 new street trees, as well as on the private property, there's going to be a landscaped area that's going to be at the tip of the project there as well. Again, it's going to be continuous ADA accessible path with a 5-foot minimum along the frontage there, providing entrance access into the residential component here, as well as a commercial space that's going to be located roughly in this portion of the project. There's one entry there, one entry there, all continuous ADA access along the frontage. We also did, just here today, we heard from Boston Water Sewer Commission. They had one minor comment, and they're going to be ready to sign on the plans too, so they're comfortable with the design that we have. From a stormwater perspective, we did touch on it last time, but we do have a distribution pipe running along the frontage of the site that provides stormwater to on-site recharge facilities that are located on the private property, designed to meet the Boston Water Sewer Commission requirements.
We touched briefly last time on the alley that's on the eastern side. What sort of gate are you using?
So I don't know if the material's been picked yet, but there would be gates at both sides that would be purely for maintenance access. It would be closed off, so it wouldn't be accessible for the public to walk through.
And again, we talked about is it 55 units? 55 units, no parking other than 2 zip cars. Again, can you just go over the public process on that and
Absolutely. So it's not necessarily a zip car because it's for the building itself. So it's a private car share service only for the residents. It wouldn't be publicly accessible. And during the process, because of the unique site constraints and concerns about being able to fit any cars in there, this was seen as an alternative that was discussed at length with the neighborhood and the community, and ultimately, given the site constraints, the location of the site directly around the corner from the Red Line train station and the car share service, it was approved or supported by the elected officials and by the mayor's office.
if I'm a resident of the building or I'm renting the building and I have a vehicle, where do I park?
So you wouldn't be able to park on site, and there are alternative parking areas, garages in the vicinity. As we had discussed last time, within the zoning decision, we agreed to restrict resident neighborhood parking permits. So they would not be taking up spaces from residents. I think based on the size.
Who did you talk to at the transportation department to include that?
So we had initial discussions. I don't remember who it was. I know we've
I think
reached.
we talked about this at the last hearing, that
Yes, sir.
you're going to reach out and formalize that agreement in some sort of MOU with the department?
Yes, sir.
Has that been done?
It has not. No, it has not been done. We have attempted to get in contact. We haven't gotten anywhere on that. But it's agreed to. It's a proviso in the zoning decision. So we will certainly follow up on that. I mean, it was discussed throughout the community outreach process and was supported by the city councilor, by the mayor's office, and by the neighborhood group.
I thought it was pretty clear last time that needed to be done, right?
Nick, who have you reached out to?
What's that?
Who did you reach out to at VTV?
Well, I made calls to the general and asked who we could talk to, and we never got a response. Again, we're not going to shirk that that duty, and we're looking to work with the city on that and the department.
Certainly call me anytime.
Okay.
I can correct you.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I just wanted to make a small comment. I know you mentioned that you received comments from us. I was just asked to bring it up. This isn't PIC related, but I know the plans have to go back to water and sewer to include the stormwater calcs. That's all. I was just asked to mention that. You had provided the stormwater calcs, but they were in a different file. We just wanted them on the plans.
Yep.
So I just wanted to give you a heads up that someone from our office may call you, or they may have already called you before,
So
before the meeting.
I spoke to Phil LaRoque less than an hour ago.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And we're going to make a small change. He was looking for one piece of information. We're going to add that to the plans and bring back up for final signature today.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
The foundation systems of your building, how deep is it going to go?
I believe it's slab on grade, so there's no below grade parking. Ultimately, you'd have to confirm with the structural engineer, but typically they'd go down 4 feet for frost depth around the perimeter. I don't know what the provisions are for internal spread footings, but typically those would be a little shallower.
So your heating, ventilation, all of those units, will it be up on the roof or bottom?
Specifically what? I'm sorry.
Your heating, ventilation, AV system,
Yes, on the
your
roof, yes.
building control systems, are they going to be up on the roof?
Correct.
On the roof.
I think I asked this the last time. Construction management plan?
We know we have to do it. That's one of those items that we'll prepare as we move forward, and we'll submit it for the record.
Who's preparing that?
Howard Steinmetz.
Mr. Busa, you have anything to add?
No.
Now
Actually,
you were supposed to say on 3 days later,
Yeah.
Mr. Hesford will have it in his hand.
So I do know that we're working with Neil and his group on a construction schedule, and that's the last thing we're waiting on before submitting it to you. So it's pending.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Todd Robbie?
All set.
Members of the public? I'll entertain a motion on the specific repair
A
plan.
motion to approve the petition by Zero Athens LLC for the making of specific repairs within the following public ways in South Boston, consisting of curb and sidewalk reconstruction, as well as new and relocated specialty pavement, street trees, storm drain infrastructure, driveway curb cuts, read into the record by the chair, and is shown in a set of plans entitled City of Boston Public Works Department Engineering Division Specific Repairs Plan, Athens and West 2nd Street Apartments, 21 to 35, West 2nd Street, South Boston, 3 sheets dated October 3rd, 2019, with the caveat that we'll formalize a MOU on the resident parking restriction and provide the CMP.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Moving on to our next item on a petition by Zero Athens LLC for the granting of a projection license for the installation of a canopy over a portion of West 2nd Street, a public way in South Boston, on its southerly side at address numbers 21-35 east of Athens Street. This was new business on November 7th, 2019, and this is shown on a plan entitled City of Boston Public Works Department, Engineering Division, Canopy License, Athens and West 2nd Street Apartments, 21-35 West 2nd Street, South Boston, one sheet dated October 3rd, 2019.
Again, Carlos Sculti with CEC for the applicant. So what we have here is a canopy, which is 5 by 8, essentially at the residential entrance to the project, which is the easterly end of the building. Projects approximately 3 feet out to the right of way. It provides 11 foot, 10 feet of clear space below and pitched backwards towards the building. The drainage will be routed internal to the building, and it's going to be heat traced as well.
All moving in and out of your building deliveries, is it from the main door or do you have a side entrance from the back side? Deliveries, if I'm moving into the building, furniture coming
If you're
in?
moving, the loading will be
From the
managed
backside.
in the backside. Right, so this is primarily for people just coming into the building.
Questions on the projection license? Todd Robbie? Members of the public? All right, I'll entertain a motion on this item.
On agenda item 8, I make a motion to approve a petition by Zero Athens LLC for the granting of a projection license for the installation of a canopy over a portion of West 2nd Street, as further described and read into the record by the chair.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you.
Moving on to new business, our first item, citywide adoption of a policy for climate resilience on a joint petition by the Boston Planning and Development Agency and the City of Boston Public Works Department.
Good morning. My name is Katie Cho. I'm the Chief Engineer for the Public Works Department.
Joe Christo, Senior Resilience and Waterfront Planner at the BPDA.
As a Climate Ready Boston initiative, we are here this morning to ask for the Public Improvement Commission to adopt a policy for climate resilience. Climate Ready Boston is the city's initiative to develop resilient solutions to prepare Boston for the impacts of climate change, rising sea levels, extreme heat, and weather events. Identifying impacts that involve the public right-of-way is a critical first step in implementing the Climate Ready Boston vision. The policy for climate resilience arose from the development of the City of Boston Resilient Design Standards and Guidelines for the protection of the public right-of-way. Representatives from Public Works, the BPDA, Environment Department, with technical support by Weston and Sampson engineers, developed and published the design standards in 2018. This work was advised by a technical advisory group, including representatives from the Mayor's Office, Parks Department and BTD, MassDOT, Massport, MEMA, DCR, EOEEA, and the MBTA, local utilities, and local and international engineering leaders in resilience. The policy for climate resilience will require projects seeking approval from the PIC to evaluate the climate risk and potential for flooding of the right-of-way and take measures to ensure the continued operation of the right-of-way during flooding events related to storm surge and sea level rise.
No, that covered it.
Can you just walk us through sort of how this would, what the approach would be for projects that would come before the PIC and how the evaluation would work and what the implications would be for that project, or how you'd foresee that?
Sure. So this will be a partnership with the BPDA. So most of the projects will go through the BPDA and the climate resilience and climate change checklist that's already part of the BPDA review. And so most of the projects will be involved in that process and will come fully ready to the PIC to address any protection of the right-of-way. Any projects that don't go through the BPDA will have a parallel checklist that we're developing that will cover the same issues.
Great. And Joe, can you just walk us through the checklist?
Yeah, that's part of Article 37. It applies to both small projects and large projects. It covers a range of issues from building sustainability to resilience to sea level rise and flooding. And it's publicly available online as well.
And how long has that been in place?
It has been in place since 2017, I believe.
So I'm kind of trying to gauge what actually this means relative to a new building being built. So what type of things are we trying to make? Obviously, it impacts the public right away. So that's what we're doing. The grades of the sidewalks, roadways, storm drain locations, et cetera. So what's the intent through the design review of how we're going to review this?
So typically what we're seeing related to resilience measures being taken on new developments is that the private property is being protected, so the buildings are being hardened, but the adjacent public realm is not being addressed. So the flooding still is happening in the public realm, even if it's not affecting the building itself. And so this checklist and the design standards related to this will look to make sure that any resiliency measures are considering the adjacent public realm as well. So it could, the design guidelines that this grew out of include features like vegetated berms, raising the harbor walk up to become a barrier rather than just a walkway. There is some accommodation of deployable barriers, but there's very clear guidelines as to when those are appropriate and not appropriate. So there's a variety of things that have been outlined that are good solutions, but it also is very flexible in terms of if a project comes forward with something that's not included in the design guidelines, as long as they provide the protection that's appropriate, they'd be considered.
Right. That's a good explanation. And, for example, we really want to get away from those aqua barriers and barriers on the public right away because they're a hindrance to emergency services, obviously the general public, et cetera. So, this looks to be good. I did speak with Amy also on this, and it looks like it's a good format.
Other questions or comments?
Katie, we have, since there's a desire to get this thing adopted fairly quickly, is there like a cheat sheet to give guidance to any persons who have done business with the PIC for some time, so that they will have some understanding as to which type of projects, which locations, a little bit more guidance than the intent of the policy.
Sure. So there are tools already on the city's website that will help with the implementation of this policy, but we'd be happy to put together a cheat sheet.
I wonder for the public hearing, it may be useful just to sort of outline. I realize that we released, the guidelines were released a year ago?
Yeah, about a year ago.
Okay. But just sort of go through what those guidelines are, which I realize you just essentially did to Ed's question, but it'd be helpful to kind of just go through those pieces.
Sure.
Yeah, because it is the public hearing, and if someone wants to refer to the action that has been taken by the commission, they will need to know, because these are just the flood-prone areas, or is it just citywide project? So I think that distinction is embedded within your decision-making tool, so that sort of guidance
Sure.
at the public hearing may give a balance to all parties who do business with the PIC.
Other questions or comments? Todd or Avi? We're good. Members of the public? All right, see you guys in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Our next item is Massachusetts Avenue, Boylston Street, Newbury Street, Boston proper, widening and relocation, specific repairs, earth retention license, private utility license on a set of joint petitions by SNAP-12, Property LLC, and the Massachusetts Department of Transportation.
Abe Menzen with Samuels, joined here with our team from VHB, Mark Boyle from Mass DOT as well. Here to talk about Parcel 12 this morning. Parcel 12 is one of the ARA's projects in the Back Bay. I'm sure you're familiar with Parcel 15 further up towards the convention center, not related to this project. Parcel 13 as well. Parcel 12 is the air rights that's bounded by the west side of Mass Ave, along Boylston Street, Mass Ave, and Newbury Street. So this is a project we've been working on since 2012. It's probably the most complicated and important project we've ever undertaken. It is located along 3 of the most important streets from the perspective of connectivity, pedestrian, Newbury Street being one of the most important pedestrian streets in the city, and Boylston Street also being such a critical link. So when we undertook to develop this project, we were focused on connecting these neighborhoods together by filling in these barren streetscapes. Over the course of the last 7 years, what we've come to realize are 2 things that have really influenced the project. Number one, all of the infrastructure that surrounds this site was really dating back to the construction of the Mass Turnpike. It works for cars, but not for pedestrians, T customers, bus users, bicyclists. So we've really spent a tremendous amount of time and energy with BTD, with Mass DOT, with MBTA, trying to figure out how to rebuild all that infrastructure to work for everyone. The other critical thing that we learned during the community process was that there was a desire for some civic space along this stretch of Mass Ave at this point in the city, and so we ended up redesigning the project through the Article 80 process to include a half-an-acre plaza and elevated parking. So just a little closer look at the infrastructure, some of the challenges that we have here, and I think the city actually raised this issue for us to consider early on in the conceptual stage, is that the intersection of Mass Ave and Newbury Street really is broken, and it all relates to the presence of the existing highway ramp at this end of Newbury Street. So when we were, after we'd gone to the community before we filed for Article 80, we actually, there were 2 pedestrian fatalities that occurred out here, and it is one of the most dangerous and worst intersections in the city. And through work with the city, the state, ourselves, we ended up taking on the obligation to build what is a DOT proposed project, which is to reconfigure this highway ramp and really push it further away from the intersection. Make the scale of this piece of Newbury Street feel more like the scale of this piece of Newbury Street, narrow this crossing from about 72 feet to about 30 feet. And so that was a fundamental piece of infrastructure reconfiguration that we needed to accomplish. We also are very focused and worked tremendous amount of work with BTD on the number 1 bus line, providing accommodations for the number 1 bus line, and reconnecting T-access to the Heinz Convention Center by creating a new head house to an existing pedestrian tunnel underneath Mass Ave. Also very focused on Boylston Street as well. Most of the transportation issues really relate to Mass Ave. So this is a ground floor plan of the project, and what you can see is we've actually shifted the building back about 40 feet from Mass Ave and creating a generous bus station with ample room for buses along Mass Ave. We've had a ton of conversations with BTD about that configuration, making sure the buses are accommodated. A bus station, a protected cycle track inboard of the bus station with measures to try to keep the pedestrians and the bikes separated. A generous pedestrian zone, a plaza activated by some great retail to pull people around Newbury Street and around to Boylston Street. Stairs that lead up to a plaza, to a park on the roof of the retail. So about half of the public space is at the ground level, about half of it is over the retail, and what the community really pointed out is there are some amazing views towards the west. There's really not a lot of places in the city where you have a western view uninterrupted. We've got retail wrapping around Boylston Street, our lobby on Boylston Street, our loading dock and garage entry on Boylston Street. We've also worked with the city to figure out how to make Boylston Street work and to create cycle accommodations and generous sidewalks there as well. On Newbury Street, what you see here, the highway ramp that now begins here has been shifted further down the end of Newbury Street. The scale here is of the scale of Newbury Street, and what we're really trying to do is prevent people from speeding through that intersection. This is a view of the plaza from Mass Ave, bus station, the cycle track, at-grade plaza, bleacher-like seating and stairs that lead up to the roof of the retail with a park at the top, and we'll have retail on both levels that activate that. We have an office building on one side and a hotel building on the other side. This is a view from the end of Newbury Street. The highway ramp is essentially where this building is today. This building has been really studied, worked with the community, DCDC, EPA staff to really come up with a design that is worthy of this location. This is a view from Boylston Street, looking to the west, the office building, the hotel building, and the plaza. This is a view. The building's also a gateway from the west as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brian to walk through some of the technical drawings.
What's the rough timeline,
So we're moving really rapidly on this. We've got getting a building permit application in this year, and goal is starting in the first quarter of next year.
And roughly, like what's the length of construction you expect?
About 28 months.
So to follow up on the chief's question before you get to the specifics, do you have approval from the Federal Highway Administration and or Mass DOT as to the exact location for that on-ramp
Yes, the FHWA has approved the ramp reconfiguration
and the location.
and the location. The 100%, we've submitted stages 30, 60, and 100% both to the city and the state for technical review of both the ramp and all of the infrastructure. We have just received comments on our 100% design with DOT, and we're in the process of just working through some of the last remaining issues. But
So again, next tiny question. So Harvard, if you're going to the Harvard Club, that is the backside. There's a huge parking lot. So if I'm coming out of the parking lot, will I be able to access this on-ramp?
No, we've met with the Harvard Club. We've, not to speak for them, or any ideas they may come up with. I think their location just of their.
So you need to design it in such a way so that someone who comes out of those parking lots is not going to shoot. Okay. So that you know what I'm trying to say, right? Sorry, your team members understanding that has to be done sensitively. The bridge structure itself, Boylston Street bridge structure, that is also DOT, and I'm going to assume we have all their approvals.
Yeah, that's an MBTA event building. That's
the bridge, the Boylston
bridge.
Street.
Marks on the top.
You're talking about the underground pedestrian tunnel?
No.
The actual bridge over the pike.
Over the turnpike, Mark.
The Mass Ave Bridge over?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have given them all their approvals, right? They have?
Yes.
Okay, so like all the federal and state approvals have been given before the PIC. PIC cannot vote. It will be difficult for us to vote if you don't have all those approvals.
Yeah, we have MEPA approval, we have FHWA approval.
We have Mass DOT signatures on all the petitions.
Amy, would you like to add something? I know you've been working with,
So we had a meeting with the state yesterday regarding specifically the limits of this ramp and where it will become a city street versus where it will be an I-90 ramp. Right now, we have the portion that looks like a street as a street and the portion that looks like a ramp as a ramp. The only point of concern here is that at that trailing edge as it leads up back into the intersection, as it will still essentially be the entrance to a ramp and function in that way. MassDOT will need permitting and access rights for that strip all the way going up, so that any work that happens there will have to be approved by Mass DOT because it will primarily impact the I-90 ramps more so than Exeter Street.
To follow on Ms. Collins' statements, because that will lead to the maintenance of that limited access ramp plus the new sidewalk space on the Boylston Street, okay, because you are creating a more of a pedestrian space. Who will be shoveling snow on that?
So we'll be maintaining all of the sidewalks, all of the plaza areas.
And snow removal and snow clearance?
Yeah, obviously the ramp itself is, I think,
Not the
state,
ramp,
right?
the
Yes.
pedestrian place.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah, please go for it. Oh, sure. I'm Brian Fairbanks from VHB, just here to describe in a little bit more detail some of the finer points. So if it's okay, I'll start with the specific repair and start with Newberry Street. So David mentioned a critical component of this project is separating the ramp from Newberry Street at the intersection with Mass Ave. So today that curb cut is about 70 feet wide. It's going to be narrowed to 28 feet wide. So it's going to be 2 lanes. One somewhat more dedicated to going directly onto the ramp, which is happening further west, and the rest to continue on Newberry Street as you head west toward Charles Gate East. I think it's important to note that the existing parking that's there will be removed. There will be no parking on this stretch of Newberry Street from basically the nose of the relocated ramp to Mass Ave. As part of what we are proposing on Newberry Street, there's about 10 feet from the proposed building, which is all within the air rights property, to the curb line that we're proposing along Newberry Street. And in that zone, so we've been asked, it's kind of a tricky area that it wants to still look like Newberry Street, but we also have to be mindful that we're approaching an interstate ramp. So we've been asked to add kind of a furnishing zone that's it has a raised planter that will have trees in it, and it will have certain elements that will look like a city streetscape, but we have been asked to have it be something that doesn't promote people to pull over there, or certainly not to park there. So some of the finer details of that haven't been fully worked out yet. The Mass DOT has asked for some sort of a barrier, not exactly, it may be, a fence, it could be a railing. Not something that needs to be crash-proof, but something that, again, deters people from, or Uber or anyone from stopping in this area. And the one other important thing to note, the existing MBTA event building, we are maintaining pedestrian access to the front of their building so that they can maintain it and get into the building from the outside as they do today.
And Brian, no T-service vehicles, though, would be parking there or along that area. We found an alternative way to accommodate.
Correct. That's still being worked out with the MBT and Mass DOT, but no, we are not proposing any parking on the south side of Newberry Street dedicated for them. Reason being that when they're not there, we couldn't really prevent other people from stopping there.
Just to note that obviously there's a lot of maintenance that goes on there, trucks.
Yeah.
Also, they have a billboard on the head house that gets serviced all the time, so those things need to be thought about.
We've had a lot of discussions with them, and we have some alternatives for access that we're working through with the T.
It really need to sort of discourage a car unnecessarily stopping there for a reason, so hopefully you don't have any doors that are opening onto Newbury.
That's correct.
That's plus, if a pedestrian should wander into that area, they are not going west and walk onto the on-ramps. I mean, that would be also very awkward.
Along our Newberry Street frontage outside of the doors for the existing vent building, there are two doors that are on the western end of the building, but those are for emergency egress only. They're not main doors. There are no retail doors. There are no hotel doors on the Newberry Street frontage. So with that,
What happens at the far west end, to Par's last point? If you progress down that sidewalk after the MBTA entrance?
What will happen? Hopefully I will see an alligator pit or something.
So I would say what we've noted on the drawings is that there's a design intervention that's required that's subject to city and state approval, but we're envisioning that there could be some sort of railing that prevents access beyond that building.
And also the furniture company across, you butter across the street, they have a loading dock, they back in, load, just about where that ramp is.
Yeah, the range is, there's an alley here that's where.
So have you had conversations with them?
We had met with them early on. We don't think that we're precluding any access to that existing condition.
Obviously, that loading occurs now, currently.
Yes.
Right.
Before after the on-ramp. This now will be in the on-ramp.
So the Federal Highway Administration needs to sign off on that because this little bit is on their limited access part. So all the access agreements should be codified with them because if something should happen over there, it's not going to be the city.
Yep.
So
Yeah, let us circle back to what the specifics of that, but I think we did review that with city and state.
they just have some document that has been reviewed by the state and the feds who clearly understand what Mr. Hesford is saying.
Okay.
Because that furniture building doesn't have any other access from, I don't think they have anything from the Com Ave side.
Correct.
Okay, and nothing on Mass Ave, so this is it.
Right.
Are there any more questions on the Newberry Street side? So moving along to Mass Ave. So there are, as David mentioned, there are significant improvements to the public realm along Mass Ave. So the project, the facade of the building along Mass Ave has been pushed back about 40 to 50 feet off of the right of way today. So in that zone, we're proposing a 7-foot raised cycle track. And we're also proposing a very large, between 10 to 15 feet wide, new public sidewalk that'll be westbound of the cycle track. There will be a new bus shelter that's being proposed to replace the existing one that's there today. And we're not physically touching the Mass Ave bridge, so the bridge and sidewalk that are there today will remain, but we're providing, again, additional sidewalk space to the west side of that cycle track. And it's worth noting that on this, we have been asked through numerous rounds of coordination with BTD and BPDA to look into, we're connecting to the existing raised cycle track that's in front of the Elliott Street Hotel, so that'll continue that walk from Commonwealth to Newbury. And again, mentioning this, we will be improving that entire intersection, so there'll be upgraded signals that we've just begun working with the signals group at BTD on that. And we will be replacing the accessible ramps in all four corners of that intersection. It is worth noting on this particular intersection, there's not room to provide separate ramps that we are proposing to. We are replacing the existing apex ramp that's there today, but it's an existing condition. And again, we've had a lot of many meetings with BPDA and BTD on this. Also, public work. There's been a lot of disabilities that you name it. So coming around the side, we are extending the improvements all the way down to the Boylston Street intersection. I think mostly, again, keep in mind the majority of this is over the DOT bridge. So what's happening along Mass Ave is actually, we're not on the terraformer version that is only right here. And although it isn't part of what we're here for specific repairs, but this is where the new head house will be to get down into the existing tunnel over to the Heinz Convention Center. And worth noting, so this will be where we have about 180 feet of bus zone that's being dedicated, and the remaining 40 feet will be for pickup drop-off. And that has gone through many rounds of comment. At one point in time, the drop-off was at the front. Now it's at the Boylston Street side. It used to be the bus lane was a little less generous, but we've been based on comments we've received, we've increased it to the 180-foot length, which seems to have satisfied the goals of BTD and BTA. Sure.
I'm both a cyclist and a vehicle heading southbound, came from Cambridge, and the car wants to make a right turn to get onto the on-ramp.
Yep.
And today, the cyclist movements and the right turn movements might be concurrent. That could be adding to some of the drama that is there. How are you managing that situation?
So they're not going to be concurrent anymore. So there's going to be separate phases for right turn vehicles. So that's the other which doesn't show on this plan. But so today there are 2 through lanes on Mass Ave heading southbound. Part of what's being done for what's in front of the Elliott Hotel and the extension of the cycle track is that we are providing room for a right turn lane on Mass Ave.
Will you have enough queuing capacity now, because some parts of Cambridge empties because it's the closest on-ramp to get on I-90, so there's a heavy right turn traffic. Now the fact that you are giving it as a protected movement only, meaning you can only make a right turn on a green arrow, is there enough queuing capacity between Newbury and ComAir for that volume of traffic? Because if it spills over, you are going to be making a bit of a situation through southbound traffic on Mass Ave.
So we're currently coordinating that with BTD Signal Group. So we met with them a couple weeks ago, and there's the analysis is still going on for those types of things.
Basically, what you may have to do is synchronize the operations of this line with what's happening at Mass Ave, ComAir, so that way the movements are not going to jam into each other.
Yeah, and I do know through our meeting with them, BTD Signal Group is looking at the re-signalization of the entire Mass Ave corridor. So
that's what is.
Yeah.
So just on the plaza area, it's mid-block. Obviously, there was a concern that has been raised many times about mid-block crossings, illegal crossings. Obviously, am I right in seeing that the bus shelter will basically be acting as more or less a channelizing device to get them to go to the intersections?
Correct. So, and then we are also, there's a planter being planned here, there's a small planter over there, and there are numerous bike racks that are strategically located so that we're trying our best to funnel, channelize people, not only just crossing Mass Ave itself, but also pedestrians from crossing the Ray cycle track. So there are, these are the 2 locations from the center plaza that we're trying to channelize pedestrians to go around the bus stop to be able to then be on the east side of the cycle track to be able to wait for buses.
And you'll be glad to know that Mass DOT just installed the new ramps at the Boylston and Mass Ave. So we appreciate that.
Thank you, Mark. Other questions on the Mass Ave side? Go ahead. Boylston Street.
Now, on the Boylston Street, this side I think is a little bit more looking like a more typical city street, that we're not over a bridge and we don't have an interstate highway. So there is an existing curb cut there today that we will be closing or modifying in order to accommodate our building. So today on Boylston Street, there's a small surface parking lot that will be being removed for the office building that you see here. Within along Boylston Street, so we are proposing a pickup drop-off zone. A lot of that used to be on Mass Ave, and due to coordinating with how much room the bus needed, a lot of that got pushed over to the Boylston Street side. So we'll be providing an accessible loading area, and the rest will be for pickup drop-off for the office, the hotel, and all the retail space. Throughout here, we have, from the curb in, we're providing a paver furnishing zone with street trees. Then we're providing a 5-foot wide raised cycle track. As you head towards the property line, we're providing a cities to 8 feet wide minimum of city standard sidewalk. And then from kind of the property line in, there's an additional, it ranges due to the undulation of the building, but there's an additional like 7 to 15 feet. So they're, again, very generous public sidewalks that will be occurring along Boylston Street. And then to the west, this is where our garage loading will be, and our garage entry exit, and then also where the loading facilities will be. And these were placed where they are to be as far away as possible from the Mass Ave Boylston intersection. And I think it was previously mentioned, so today there's actually not a matter of it being not accessible. There is not a ramp at all on the east side of Mass Ave. So as part of this project, we had worked with DOT and with the city on coming up with designs to be able to add a pedestrian ramp on the east side of Mass Ave. So it's a little bit tricky that it is on bridge structure, so it's not as easy as
We did it last week.
What's that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, and also with that, based on coordination with BPDA and BTD, so we're doing some improvements on the south side of Boylston Street that is providing a protected area for to separate cyclists and pedestrians crossing Boylston. And this entire intersection, actually, from Mass Ave to Boylston, has been designed as a protected intersection where we're providing as much separation as we can between different modes of transportation, pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles.
Speaking of cyclists, currently today, there's a bike station along that road. What's the discussion and resolution on that?
So we are taking that same, as it stands now, we're taking the one that's there, we're relocating it onto Mass Ave, so it's really not moving that far. It's only moving about 50 feet away from where it is today.
Couple of minor points. So if I'm heading westbound on Boylston Street, before I get to Mass Ave, so I'm on this side.
Westbound.
Yeah, westbound, but I'm coming from the Heinz.
Yep.
Right now, because of your neck down, and I believe that segment of Boylston is still a two-way street, both sides.
Yes.
So I forget what the lane configuration is for the curb lane, because if you are on the curb lane and if you don't make a right turn, you're going to come smack into your neck down area.
Are you talking about when you're on Mass Ave or
Boylston
going west?
I think the center line of the road is not really moving. There's actually a really wide single lane right now.
So
yeah, today these are 2 lanes, but the right lane is a right turn only.
okay, so it is still a right turn.
Correct.
Right. The second part, the sidewalks that you was mentioning, the city rebuilt those sidewalks with trees, not yesterday, but a few years back, but we built it all the way to the next stoplight. Okay?
So hit switch.
Right, so it'll be really nice if you pick up the new urban design vocabulary, because we put some trees with specialized treatments to keep those trees alive. So We'll take a look at that. Your new vocabulary and this few trees that are remaining is going to look out of state.
Okay. We'll take a look at
Am
that.
I making any sense to you? Because
Yeah, you're saying there's the tree grades and the design.
the sidewalk,
Sidewalk.
the sidewalk vocabulary
Yeah.
is going to be out of step with your project being as huge as it is. So that last bit of sidewalk from your project limit to, I forget what that.
Ipswich,
Okay?
yeah.
So that needs to be a continuum, otherwise it's going to look really
Yeah.
out
I
of.
think there's a question between now and public hearing for, is it consistent, we want consistency with your Mass Ave phase, we want consistency with the Ipswich stretch, or we want consistency with Boylston Street sidewalk standard we're using in other places?
No, just his part.
Just that part?
Just,
Okay,
just.
perfect.
Whatever you are doing in front of your part, just carry it to Ipswich.
Okay. Let us take a look at that. It's much narrower in front of the two existing buildings on the corner, so we'll see what we can do to try to.
Just try and, I'm not asking you to no widening.
Right.
Just have a common theme because we tried our best to keep those trees alive and it's been a challenging moment.
Yep.
Okay. So just, we can't have 3 trees that look like Charlie Brown Street's trees and then yours.
Right. Okay. Other things on the Boylston Street side? Any questions on Boylston Street? All right.
Just a quick comment just about the specific repairs in general. So we did receive your resubmitted site plan. I just want to make a comment that it's still under review.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Want to move on to widening relocation?
Sure. So I think a lot of this was already explained when I went through the specific repair on Mass Ave, but this is the mechanism we are extending the public sidewalk into the private property and the public raised cycle track. So the widening and relocation is due to accommodate city sidewalks.
Right. Todd, do you have the widening and relocation plans? Or should I miss, or maybe
Oh,
we're-
my bad.
Hang on. Right, go ahead.
Yes, we do.
Thanks. Sorry, go ahead, Brad.
That's
So you are widening this street in a very charming way into private property? Is there another way of managing this situation? Reason being?
This is the right.
Yeah, this is,
No, this is trees.
this is the best way to allow pedestrians and bikes to
Or
flow
for the
through
bikes to
here.
be? Yes. Okay. Many states we have had multiple easements and other areas, so since we have a primary mode of transportation
Yeah.
going through that area, the street needs to.
And this action will result in a highway easement being granted to the city.
But it is still a highway surface easement because the turnpike's underneath.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
our new street lights and can you amplify a little bit about how the street lighting system is going to be now to support the bicycle cycle tracks that are going to be within this widened area?
Sure, yeah, so along Mass, actually, from the portion of Newberry Street that is going to be city and all around Boylston Street and throughout Mass Ave, there are streetlights, city standard streetlights that we're proposing as part of this project.
And it'll, because you said something about the head house and various, have someone verify that there's enough light that is going to be coming for the new cycle track areas.
Yep.
I presume you will have your own lighting in the plaza area.
That's correct.
Yeah, I
Should
don't
they
know.
match? Now, unfortunately, the other side of Boylston Street, not your side, the other side, what's the future for that side? Because it'd be really nice on this side, there.
Yes, possibly.
Is possible picking it up? I don't know.
No, that's sorry. It's not part of this.
No, but is someone picking it up?
You'll see that eventually.
Okay, good. And there's some communications between all agencies for a common vocabulary in terms of the infrastructure?
There will be.
Earth protection?
Yep. So, lastly, let Dave take this money, will be better suited to speak to this board.
So we're just seeking sort of typical rights for earthwork-related tiebacks under Boylston Street. Similar to what we've done with other projects, we've got a pretty constrained triangular site here, and so it'd be really helpful to be able to use tiebacks along Boylston Street. They would be angled down as we've done in the past, below the utilities.
So as Mass DOT, have they basically approved the lane closures, to get your earth retention system, your structural elements into the right-of-way? Have they approved that schedule?
Yeah, we're very, in terms of the engineering of that system, we're at the 100% stage now. We've had endless, meetings about earthwork design and design criteria and deflection criteria and all of that. So our design, the optimal design, involves tiebacks on the Boylston Street side. In terms of the lane closure sequencing and the traffic management plans, that's sort of a separate.
May I say it slightly differently?
Yeah.
It is extremely difficult or inappropriate for this commission to take action over items that are on other people's properties, even though there's an impact. So it'd be really, really nice, and I'm very appreciative that you have had 100% of closing conversations. But if we can get some documentation from the state who speaks on behalf of the feds stating that your means and methods of construction, all of this stuff, is okay by them. Will you be able to do that?
So I think there's a chicken and egg problem there because we have to submit for a building permit application and they have to review the building permit package before they can sign off officially. They have signed the petitions, for the PIC actions. We need to get the PIC sign off in order to apply for the building permit.
Mark, because they are going to be driving piles that are not, that's within the federal, the limited right-of-way access. Okay, so just because they show this stuff on these plans, we cannot take action unless.
Yeah, no, I understand. So
how do we manage this?
MassDOT did sign off on the petition, so we've looked at that in the application for the petitions. Is that?
Sorry,
is that enough?
I think what we're asking, and there's been meetings over the last 2 years.
Yes.
Going over the sequencing and how the lane closures, et cetera. Has MassDOT signed off on their proposal?
Well, as Abe stated, we're in the end of that final review period. And so no objections to that piece of it. There's other issues on other parts of the logic design, the logic project design, but no objections have been raised by that. But, we haven't completed, 100% completed the final approval of it.
So from our side of the house, basically construction management plan, basically we've looked at with Suffolk, et cetera. We're comfortable with that right now, but obviously there's a few elements basically in the sequencing of basically night work in a residential area and what they're going to allow. Obviously, they're probably not going to put you out there during the daytime doing stuff. So we need to have a discussion on some of the mitigation going with the project for the structural elements.
So if we could get through the PIC, but the CMP maybe won't be finalized until we get through all of those discussions, it would at least allow us to move forward to the building permit application stage.
And again, the construction management plan, from the city's point of view, we're comfortable with it, the way it's set up.
Yep.
It looks good,
Yep.
but it's just some of the nuances within that CMP that we need to have a discussion.
Okay.
And now that Mark has sat down, it's probably a question for Mark. But, sorry. But obviously, with the Common Bridge replacement, you did a lot of communication and outreach around lane closures. I think there'll have to be a similar amount of education, outreach, coordination. It's going to be over a much longer duration of time. So coordination with the city, communication with the public is going to be just really important. I assume there's a pretty robust plan which you guys are going to work through on that.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Happy to be partners on that. Other questions or comments on earth retention? Dave or Brian, anything else you guys want to comment? No? Todd or Abby?
And you need to wrap this thing up before the year is out, right? Sorry. You need to wrap this up before the year is out?
Yes.
For the other stuff.
Members of the public? All right, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Great, thank you.
Until then.
Our next item is 1 Halleck Street, Gurney Street, Station Street, Roxbury, specific repairs on a petition by P25 Phase 2 LLC.
So good morning. My name is Ricardo Sanchez. I am a senior project manager with the Mission Hill Neighborhood Housing Services. We are a nonprofit community development corporation focusing on housing and economic development work in the Mission Hill neighborhood specifically. The project that we are here to talk to you about today is Parcel 25, Phase 2. Parcel 25, to give you a sense, it's a large parcel of land, the 77,000 square feet that we purchased from the MBTA in 2012 after a multi-year community visioning process. The property is bounded by Tremont Street to the south, Gurney Street and Halleck Street to the west, Station Street to the north, and it is sort of bound on the eastern side by the MBTA Orange Line and the Southwest Corridor. The Roxbury Crossing MBTA Orange Line station is located directly across the street from the site. Currently, the Phase 2 site is a parking lot, temporary parking lot that was developed as part of the Phase 1A project. And if you will turn to the third page of the handout that I provided, I want to talk to you a little bit about the phasing of the project. So we purchased this property in 2012. We have been focused on implementing the community's vision since then. In 2015, we completed a property across the street from the Parcel 25 site called the Maria Sanchez House, which was 40 units of affordable elderly housing, low and extremely low income housing, 40 units. In 2017, which is actually the last time we were here before you, we finished the 1 Gurney Street project, Parcel 25, Phase 1A, which is 40 units for families, also affordable rental, office space for another nonprofit organization, Metro Housing Boston, used to be MBHB, and some retail spaces along Tremont Street that were to extend the Mission Hills Main Street district and activate that part of the site. The community's vision was always for this to be a transit-oriented development that would bring people to the site, that would bring activity, new housing opportunities, and specifically they had mentioned senior rental, affordable family rental, and also home ownership. The project, as it was initially approved in the PDA process, called for the rental housing to be built, called for a couple of phases of rental housing, and called for a 10-story commercial structure, an office structure that we have since moved away from. But if you take a look at the site plan, the Phase 1A site is located there at the corner of Gurney Street and Tremont Street. It is most prominent to the MBTA station. The project that we're talking about today is Phase 2, and Phase 2 is a 46-unit family project, affordable rental. Again, 34 of the units will be affordable to families at 60% of area median income. 1 unit will be available at 50% of area median income, and 11 units will be affordable at 30% of median income, extremely low income units. Of these units, 5 units are set aside for formerly homeless families. We have 3 units that are set aside for disabled folks through the community-based housing program, CBH, for folks with particular enhanced needs. And we have another 3 units that are affordable through the Section 811 program for families with disabilities as well. In addition, the project does provide for a 29 space parking deck underneath the building, 23 spaces of which are for the exclusive use of the residents of this building. And we do also provide another 46 bicycle rack spaces as part of the overall development.
Sir, if I may interrupt you for a moment, and I hope I don't put you off your train of thought. Todd, in the petition it says the very first street is Halleck, Halleck Street. Is that a new street?
No, Halleck is an existing street. My understanding is that's the address of the project, even though the actions that we're considering are only taking place on Gurney and Station.
So is it a city street?
Yes, it is.
And it goes sort of snaking.
It's the other side of Gurney Street, right?
Right, it's basically, well, Gurney Street comes this way from Tremont, and then it turns west.
Got it, sir. Thank you. Because in your, all right.
Yeah, so the space, what's considered to be Halleck Street is actually this stretch of land between the Station Street and the Gurney Street where it turns. Hence, one Halleck Street address.
Yeah, and because there's no interior street, right? This is an interior pedestrian.
That's an
right?
interior pedestrian plaza.
That interior is a source of topic on phase one.
Right.
When you're delivering the pedestrians at a mid-block, which was a problem. And basically, for phase one, we were supposed to install a barrier to prohibit that.
Which we did. I think your recommendation at that occasion was that we minimize because what we have is a pedestrian plaza that goes over what's the Stony Brook culvert, and it comes out in front of the MBTA station, and it exits out onto Gurney Street on the other side. You had asked us to de-emphasize that side so that people wouldn't use the pathway as much. It wouldn't
You
sort
would
of
just
promote-
check and make sure that that's still there because
Absolutely, yes, it is
I got
there.
a lot
We
of
did do it.
constituent complaints, so.
It's actually a very nice feature, landscaping feature in the overall development. But wanted to say the project is about $22 million. We have received city and state funding for the project. We are currently at the CD phase of our architectural plans. We expect that we will be able to complete those within a month or so. We expect to be selecting a general contractor within the next couple of weeks, and at which point we would then look to try to apply for a building permit. As I said, we have the financing has been committed to the project. We need to do a closing, and we would expect to be able to enter into construction Q1 of next year or beginning of phase of the second quarter with regard to that. I think with that, I'll turn it.
The pictures which you are showing in this document,
Yes.
are those buildings representative of the type of buildings which you are hoping to build?
Actually, I'm sorry. These are actually, that is the Phase 2 building.
Okay, so that's how it's going to look?
Yes, that's largely the way it's going to look. I think we're still sort of tweaking a little bit.
This is way outside these boards.
Yeah.
But you may want to soften the facades because they look very concrete blocks.
Yeah.
And there are some because I know you are trying to maximize the limited resources that you are getting, but there are some very good architects can help you to add a little bit of personality.
Yeah.
to the facade so that it doesn't look like a cinder block
Right, well,
system?
it is definitely not cinder block.
Okay.
You know, we have a fiber cement, we're going through a process now with the City of Boston Department of Neighborhood Development.
Yes.
And with the BPDA on
Wonderful.
exterior site.
Yes.
And we actually did go before the BCC, Boston Civic Commission, as well, and benefited from their comments as well. So what you see here are actually, there's a view of the building from the Gurney Street side here, and the building from the plaza side, as if you were looking from the MBTA station sort of across the site. Entrances located, there's a long lobby here that's entered through the plaza and also on the Gurney Street side. And part of the community's desire was for stoops that would activate the street on the residential side. So we're trying to recreate what was there at one point in time. So we do know that we have specific work that we are looking to do, and that we would hope that we would be able to benefit from your support on.
Quick question, sir. Gurney Street, adjacent to your property, I'm going to assume your construction alone will make the sidewalk messed up and you will rebuild the sidewalk, yes?
Yeah, well, the sidewalk is in really rough shape right now.
On your side?
On our side of Gurney Street.
Yes,
So
but what
we're
about
going-
the other side?
On the opposite side?
Yeah, is it
This
good?
is in good condition, and we just recently, through the Phase 1A project, did part of the sidewalk on that
Yeah, because
side.
we are appreciative of the fact that you are building a project that is more centered towards the transit part of the equation, which means people are going to walk
Right.
on both sides of the sidewalk, and just trying to make sure that when the project is over, that Gurney Street will have walkable sidewalks on both sides with your assistance.
Yeah. We will do what we can within the confines of the budget of an affordable housing project. We have, as I mentioned, done work across the street. This is owned by the MBTA, this side, and the sidewalk there is actually in good shape. The sidewalk that's in rough shape is actually here and around the corner on State
And you
Street.
will adjust that.
And we will be rebuilding that, yes, as part of the project.
This is a very helpful overview. Can you walk us through the specific repairs that are being proposed on the?
Will Street with Mitch, I'll walk you through what we're proposing for specific repairs. So along Station Street, or Gurney Street, I apologize, we have staircases that are kind of extending down from the building. The building's offset by 6 to 8 feet. Staircases are extending down from these units pretty much right up to the property line. So we have about 6.5 feet of concrete, the combination of concrete and proposed paving strip that we're currently proposing. So when we initially came in, we had a produced paving strip that went all the way through. With some trees through discussion with BPDA and Mayor's Commission for People with Disabilities. We discussed eliminating some of the street trees or rearranging them possibly to have a straight path of travel. So what we're currently proposing is a street tree with pervious paving strip over here, and explore a couple options, coordinate with BPDA and Mayor's Commission on Disability with our design team to see if there's a way we can kind of keep the character of the street, some of the trees, coordinate with them as we move forward with that. So concrete sidewalk all the way through. We have curb ramps extending across right here. And because all of these ramps here are currently apex ramps, so we're proposing to reconstruct them, perpendicular ramps on these intersections. This is, after made as an apex ramp, the building actually comes right up to the corner, and there are a couple of utility grates that are right there. So we're proposing to put in a technical warning surface, reconstruct according to code, and having perpendicular ramps everywhere else.
Quick thing on this, assuming you look at it, but the ramp that is sort of on the Tremont side, Gurney Street, and the one that's on the southwest quarter side of Station Street, they both, neither of them sort of line up with a clear path of travel. Is there anything that one can do to bring the Station Street one sort of closer in line with
exactly, as pedestrians are headed.
To further what the chief's saying, I know when you all, as design engineers, when you design these crosswalks at an intersection, you are trying to balance ADA requirements of, we asking they be 90. But if you think back as to why it was a 90-degree, that was when all our intersections were like this. So you need to sort of use some engineering judgment skills to ensure that the crosswalk is actually in line with where a pedestrian needs to go. And if you find out that since Boston has a lot of skewed intersections, that you need to apply for a variance to support an apex ramp, we need to do the sensible thing. And I hate to be like pontificating over here, but we seems to be like churning crosswalks where no one is ever going to use it. Okay, so balance that thing for us, please.
We have a couple restrictions right here in terms of building.
Catch basins.
Yeah, catch basins, and there's also existing utility pole that's right there, so that's kind of what's restricting us from pushing this.
Well, some of those things can be adjusted.
Yes.
Okay, utility poles, they are there at our invitation. Okay, so.
Take a look at it, and then along Station Street, so we have an existing 22-foot curb cut that provides access to that temporary lot that was constructed as part of phase 1A. Proposing to reconstruct, change the grades a little bit, but use that same area to provide the access to the garage that's going to be underneath the building. And we're proposing 7.5 feet of concrete sidewalk is over here, and an additional curb cut, 24 feet wide, that's providing access to the temporary parking lots and have the additional 26 spaces. And as far as improving travel for everyone along these roads, we're going to be reconstructing those on the sidewalk along here, connecting those two ramps that are happening there, and providing the revised curb ramps to provide access on these other intersections.
Does that garage entrance allow for off-street loading? Or is this the height?
Right, no, we actually are going to be building as part of this phase a temporary parking lot a little bit further down on the site, a little closer to the end of Station Street. That would be where we would expect to do the loading and offloading and trash pickup and that kind of stuff would happen there. At some point, it may be that we would do that, but when the full build-out of the project happens, it'll actually happen closer to the end of Station Street on a designated way that we will build for servicing and those kinds of issues.
Under a full build-out scenario, how many units will be there?
Sure. So we've got 40 units in Phase 1A, 46 in Phase 2, and Phase 3, we're currently proposing about 80 units, mixed-income condominium.
So 160 units, how many on-street parking spots are you proposing, keeping in mind that you are close to a police station?
How many off-street?
On-street.
On-street.
No, on-site.
On-site.
On-site parking
Yes, so
spots.
we've got the 29, I believe ultimately we will need a total of 46 spaces to remain compliant with the approved PDA. Yes.
Is your Phase 1A addressed off of Tremont Street, or is it addressed off of Gurney Street?
It is actually, it's a 1 Gurney Street address. That is the official building address. It does have 1419, 1417, 1415, 1413 on Tremont Street, and 1411, which is actually on the site, is the Metro Housing Boston space.
This may not be something we want to get into, but with Par's earlier question, is anybody addressed off of Gurney Street when it takes a left? That 1 block stretch? I think it's a 1 block stretch essentially between
Tremont.
Sorry.
It's only ourselves, currently only ourselves and the senior building.
And it takes a left before it hits Parker, is that what you're talking about?
I mean, essentially, similar to Tremont Street, we have Gurney Street taking a left essentially in the middle of the block, the same way Tremont Street takes a left. We can also think about
getting rid of.
Right, and having a different name for that street, so we don't have a street that takes a left. It goes 1 block and takes a left.
Takes a left, yeah.
The issue is we have a street intersecting itself, so.
Gurney and Gurney.
Yeah.
What is it then? Okay, never mind.
We didn't address into history.
Yeah, just within like walking distance, you got Tremont doing that thing, Columbus doing that.
How many other properties not owned by your team are adjacent to that section of Gurney Street?
That actually face onto it. I don't believe that there's one Gurney Street, which is the Phase 1A building. There's 30 Gurney Street, which is the senior building. And then if you take the turn, there's Fuentes Market, but that's probably a Parker Street address. And there's Wentworth Institute of Technology's Facilities Building, which I believe is also a Wentworth Street address.
We can look at.
We'll have a discussion.
Other elements of the proposal you want to go through?
That's about it as far as specific clearance in terms of what we're looking at.
Other questions or comments? So, the TAPA, was that done as an overall project, or do you have a separate TAPA for this?
We have a separate TAPA for that, yes.
And construction management plan, where are we in development of that?
We're about 2 weeks away from designating our general contractor. Once we do that, we would like to involve them in the process of doing the construction management plan. It's very likely that it will be the same contractor that did the work on the Phase 1 site. So they're very familiar with the site, very familiar with the area, and should be able to work with that.
Other questions or comments? Todd or Avi? Good. Members of the public? All right, see you guys in 2 weeks.
Thank you so much.
Well done. All right, our next item of new business is East 8th Street, East 9th Street, Mercer Street, Reverend Richard A. Burke Street, Patterson Way, and South Boston, pedestrian easements with repairs on a set of joint petitions by Old Colony Phase 3B4 Limited Partnership, Old Colony Phase 3B9 Limited Partnership, Old Colony Phase 3C Limited Partnership, and the Boston Housing Authority.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you to the Commission for having us on the agenda today. I'm Darcy Jameson. I always get here and feel like it's Groundhog Day. I'm with Beacon Communities Development. We're the development partner with the Boston Housing Authority on the redevelopment of Old Colony, here with Dana Dilworth from the Housing Authority and John Schmidt. I think, as the Commission knows, we've been working diligently over the past 10 years under the master plan to redevelop Old Colony. Phases 1 and 2 are done. About probably almost 2 years ago, a year and a half ago now, we got all of our permitting approved for Phase 3, which is broken down into 3 subcomponents, A, B, and C. Phase 3A is currently under construction. Thank you to everybody's support on that. And we're getting ready to start demolition and new construction on B and C. The buildings are vacant. We're sort of ready to roll pending all final permitting getting wrapped up. Just to say out loud, there are 3 entities that you'll hear us mention because the Phase 3B building of 115 apartments is a twinned tax credit deal with 2 ownership entities, similar to what we did in Phase 3A at the request of DHCD and the Boston Housing Authority, and then Phase 3C.
Ms. Jameson?
Yes.
Just so that I can keep things straight, the petition is by a series of limited partnerships, our maintenance agreements. How do the maintenance agreements have a lifetime of its own when you have limited partnerships that dissolve after some time? Because when we started this project, it was BHA and the entity which you came. Now I see lots of little babies, a series of limited partnerships. Just from a legal perspective, how does our maintenance agreement survive when a limited partnership is no longer limited? What happens?
Yeah, it does. That's all right. It's a project concern we run with the land. As long as the street is here, it's a maintenance agreement will be there.
Okay, so we don't care if that's a limited partnership that may dissolve.
Right.
It goes with the property, but I feel like part of this is that it's being coordinated, correct me if I'm wrong, on your side to make sure that there is
an easy or a common way that we are maintaining or upholding the LMI across all properties, even though there's multiple partners.
Yes.
We will not be able to figure out whether this was 3B4 limited or B9 limited.
Right.
For us, it is the old colony project. When something goes awkward over there, hopefully one master maintenance agreement covers everything. And so the question is actually, Ms. Jameson, to us, is that the case?
Yes.
Thank you. And Sean works with our attorney at Nixon PBD on all of this. Thank you. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that we have an approved TAPA for all of Phase 3. We did a construction management plan for Phase 3A, which is obviously being implemented now. We do have our general contractor on board now, so they're working with Niche Engineering on our CMP, which we will submit in due time to you folks as well. I'm going to stop there.
Do you propose to have this under construction at the same time as this phase going on right now?
Yes.
So that CMP needs to demonstrate the coordination between both.
Okay, that's really helpful.
Very concerned about the school, obviously.
Yes.
So, take a hard look at that and how that works.
Yes, we have been, and that's a good reminder. We'll make sure we articulate that and happy to discuss it. Okay.
Good morning, John Schmidt, Niche Engineering. So Phase 3A is the component that was approved previously and is under construction now. Phase 3B is bounded by Patterson along our side, this side here. East 9th Street here, East 8th Street here, Mercer Street here, and then this is 9th Street here.
And John, sorry if you address, can you just point out if you want A and B? And the other?
Right, so A is this component here.
Phase 1 and 2.
All right. So Phase 1 here was built back in the early 2000s. Phase 2C was around 2008, 2010. This Phase 3 is now in construction, 2018, 2019. 3B and C is the phases that were here before you today, and the construction for this will be starting in 2020. So what we've done is we've carried the same design components through each phase, where we have concrete sidewalks, we have street trees where there's room on site for them. We have new streetlights, so there'll be consistent streetlights throughout the entire program. We are reconstructing the sidewalk in front of Perkins School as part of this project, so it'll be, when we're done, we'll have a completely new sidewalk through here, as well as down East 8th Street here. Part of the application is we are asking for pedestrian easements in areas where we need them in order to provide the proper sidewalk width. And that is proposed on East 9th Street. East 8th Street and Mercer will all have sidewalk easements in order for us to reconstruct the sidewalks in the manner that is appropriate for this use. If you'd like, I can get into the weeds a little bit more.
And these are all City of Boston Street, not BHA streets, correct?
Correct.
That's previous.
And you are looking after all of it, right?
Yes, as part, and basically the work that John is outlining here is what is outlined in the approved TAPA plan.
Yes,
So,
and meaning you will build the buildings and you will build the roads and do whatever that needs to be done. It's all yours, right, Ms. Jameson?
in accordance with the approved TAPA plan and what John's articulating now.
So on Reverend Burke Street, between Patterson Way and Mercer, this is where the school is here. So we'll be reconstructing the sidewalk there. We're not proposing any street trees or that sort of furniture because it's a heavy area for drop-off and pickup. In front of the parcels that we are building our own site, we are constructing sidewalks. We're putting new streetlights here that complement the project. The streetlights on this section in front of the Burke School are already installed and complement the design of the neighborhood.
And obviously, as we talked about the CMP, I mean, the sidewalk work in front of the school, I would foresee that being done during the summer?
First week of September.
You know, we haven't gotten to that level of detail, but I'm going to make a note, and we'll make sure we think that through. Okay.
I've had many dealings with the headmaster over there. I'm sure you have too.
Yeah, and I've actively emailed him and called to try and keep him in the loop and make sure he knows we're available if he's got any questions, and been checking in with his staff when I'm on site to just say, is everything going fine? And, you know, our super at 3A has introduced himself to them. So I haven't heard anything. Happy to address it if anybody else has.
That's a good thing.
On Patterson, we're constructing the sidewalks on the Phase 3C side, new concrete sidewalks, new street lighting. We're not proposing any street trees here because there are existing mature trees that abut the property line, so we'll be respectful of that. East 9th Street that runs through the center of the project. Here, we are constructing new sidewalks, new curbing on both sides, new street lighting on both sides, installing street pits where there is space available that's not compromised with utilities. And we also have pedestrian easements here proposed as well in order to provide the sidewalk width. We have an 8-foot sidewalk, 5 feet concrete path of travel.
John, just from a summary perspective, all these sidewalk and urban design details are a consistent vocabulary that has been approved by
Throughout,
all of us.
yeah, going back to
Just
phase 1.
churning out more of the
Right.
stuff, and you are assuring us that there are no hiccups or any variations to any of it.
No, we've maintained the same design component through each phase.
Makes it a lot easier on our part.
Yes.
Yep.
Us too.
East A Street, similar scheme, reconstructing the sidewalk, installing street trees, installing street lights. We are also proposing a pedestrian easement. 8-foot sidewalk, 5-foot path of travel. And then on Mercer Street, same deal. New sidewalks, new street trees, pedestrian easement, 8-foot sidewalk, 5-foot path of travel.
Any of these are raised crosswalks?
No, everything's the conventional crosswalk.
We're having a conversation about particularly whether it's turning on to Mercer, turning on to Patterson, whatever the sort of the sort of secondary streets might be, whether that's an appropriate traffic calming device, and just take a look at that.
Are you asking us to investigate whether we want?
So work with the Boston Transportation Department's active transportation group.
Okay.
They have received petitions citywide that people are deciding slow streets.
Yep.
Plus the DCR roadway,
Yep.
Bay Boulevard.
Yep.
Okay, we put speed humps over there. They are going to be taken out.
Okay.
And so if speed is a concern,
Okay.
you may be in a interesting place where the city may be supportive of putting well-placed, properly positioned speed humps.
Okay.
So that's active transportation and engineering.
Is that something we should try to resolve in the next 2 weeks? Or is that something
We
we
can start that conversation.
start the conversation?
Yes.
And, all right, and we'll get there before construction. Sounds great, thank you.
So that way, Darcy, after you're done, your nice guests won't be coming to us saying, hi, do something.
Understood. Thank you. I think it's a good thing to look at now. Thank you.
John, Darcy, anything else you want to cover?
No, have a nice holiday.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you very much.
Yep. Tyler, Robin?
We're good.
All right, thanks, folks.
See you in 2 weeks.
Our final item of new business is 457 West Broadway, Silver Street, South Boston, pedestrian easement, specific repairs on a set of petitions by Navin West Broadway LLC.
Almost good afternoon to the commission. Thank you for having us here. I'm Jim Heffernan. I'm owner, chief legal counsel, and a member of the development team behind Navin West Broadway. This is a mixed-use development at 457-469A West Broadway. 44 residential units upstairs, 3 commercial units on the first floor, 48 parking spaces. And our business before you is for improvements along West Broadway and also an easement on Silver Street in the back.
So Robert Messenger from Howard Stein Hudson. I'll just locate the project first. We've got West Broadway to the north, Silver Street to the south. There's existing buildings to the east and the west immediately adjacent. The closest intersecting streets are F Street to the west and Dorchester Street to the east. The specific repairs along West Broadway, we're removing and resetting the curb, and we're reconstructing the sidewalk. There's an existing street tree there that is to be protected and to remain, and we are adding another street tree. No, we're not removing any. We're adding 5 bike racks in total, and the pedestrian pathway from the Silver Street.
Robert,
Yes.
before you go there, the scoring patterns for the concrete sidewalk on West Broadway, is it matching on the other two sides, or are you introducing a new scoring pattern? There's a little bit of detail over here that I'm not sure if it's a drafting issue or whether you actually want to score the concrete in that manner.
I'll have to confirm
Will you
with the
please?
architect, but I'll make sure that.
Also for the public hearing, if you could bring us some sort of a photograph that shows your project.
Okay.
That way, sir, we will be in a better position to understand what is it that we are evaluating.
Absolutely. Moving on to Silver Street, we have reconstruction in the sidewalk and removing the recycled curbway. We are also calling for a modification to the existing curb cut into the parking garage access on Silver Street.
Can you just comment on the curb cut that is closer to the Dorchester Street?
Yeah.
It seems to overlap a little bit with a door that is also coming out. Is that, am I reading that correctly?
So the dashed line is the proposed, the solid blue is the existing, that's the dash that extends past that, so that right in front of that doorway will be removed.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Got it.
You need to adjust the drawing so that the drawing shows the new curb cut properly rather than just an opening. It could be somewhat misleading.
Okay, so we got input from disabilities, they wanted the driveway curb cut to provide that consistent
True,
access, so
just
that's why we
kind of-
have the straight transitions.
Get your drafts person.
Yeah. And in addition to that, we are retaining the existing street lighting here. And of course, we are petitioning for pedestrian easement up here. Right now, from the sidewalk to the property line, there's 3 feet. And from the property line to the proposed building, we're asking for 3 feet. So pedestrian.
Okay, sir, I'm sorry, I have to ask you because I just don't know. Is this an existing building you are tearing down?
This is an existing building. This is the old Family Dollar store location.
So a new building. So the two buildings to the immediate left and the right, what is their height in comparison to your building?
To our left from Silver Street, it's 5 stories, I believe.
And to your right, it is something, and you are something. I just want to get a
Yeah, they're all roughly about 5 stories each. I think the one on the right, I don't know if it's the one immediately there. There's one I think is 6 stories.
So it is, again, the housing, not the word vocabulary, I mean, there's sense to the madness.
Yes.
They are on the same size.
Correct.
Got it. And are you going to have any balconies that are going to protrude onto the sidewalk of West Broadway?
No, sir.
So you will maintain the building facade?
That is
as
correct.
needed?
Yep.
This may be a question for Todd, but so the resulting sidewalk on Silver Street will be 6 feet wide?
Correct.
Is that essentially, as buildings are coming down Silver Street, is that what do you know if that's the standard route?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a ton of development going on Silver Street, but we are trying to maximize it as best we can.
Okay.
Because, South Boston, maybe.
Yeah, we're not going to get to 8 feet down there.
Sarah will appreciate every inch, right?
Just one additional note on Silver Street, we have recessed the doorways so they do not open into the pedestrian.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
And the loading for the building?
So I defer to Guy.
Thank you. Guy Busa, Howard Stein Hudson. So this project does not have on-site loading. The loading will occur as it does today from West Broadway. We're actually going to seek a loading zone, a commercial loading zone on West Broadway.
And this had its happen, correct?
Pardon? Yeah, the TAPA was submitted yesterday.
Did
To
this go
BTD.
under small projects or large projects?
This was just above a large project at 65,000 square feet.
Okay, so there are a few units.
Yeah.
Yep.
Construction management plan, that's been finalized.
I believe
know my
so.
staff has reviewed that with you, and that's
Right, there was
tricky,
some
but,
coordination with the building across the street, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
Mr. Goose, at the intersection of Dorchester Ave, East Broadway, that funky little
Yes.
intersection, there's a stoplight there, right?
Correct.
Is there a bus stop right in front of your building?
Not directly in front of our building, but there is close by, there are close by bus stops, correct, at that intersection. Part of the mitigation in the TAPA is a monetary contribution to assist with improvements at that location.
To be done by,
Right now, it's funds will be paid to the BPDA at the issuance of a building permit.
For signal design?
No, it's whatever improvements, it's a design for whatever improvements,
But
yeah.
again, you just submitted it yesterday,
Yeah,
right? So
correct. Yeah,
We may make
exactly.
some modifications of that.
That's fine. Understood. Amy, you can check it out. I CC'd you on that.
Other questions or comments? Bobby or Todd? Good. Members of the public? All right, see you guys in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor? So moved.